So time to take a look at this morning's papers now. With me this morning, journalist and author Yasmin Alibhai-Brown, and we should have journalist and author Joanna Williams very shortly. We just had a few technical problems getting through to her, but I can say good morning to you, Yasmin. Lovely to see you.
Good morning.
And you should be joined very shortly by Joanna in a moment, but let's crack on, shall we, and take a look at the front pages, which all of them, I think, go with the leadership race for the leader not only of the Tory party, but of course the country. You picked out The Guardian, I know, and there's the headline, Tory tribes go to war, and they have photographs there of the three candidates we think are in the running, although only Penny Mordaunt has publicly declared.
That's right, and it's, it's very, very interesting to me that the focus, the country is in such crisis, and almost every paper is focusing on Boris Johnson and the war within the Conservative Party, and this is quite interesting. I am surprised that somebody as sensible as, say, Alok Sharma, I think Johnson's got 5 declared supporters, and Wallace are supporting Johnson, who just weeks ago was pushed out by his own party. And the tribal war, which has been going on a very long time, I think I want to say here is, however you feel about the Conservative Party, the nation is in crisis, and they're still not able to address that. And I personally don't feel Boris Johnson has grown up enough to understand that. He's been in the Caribbean all these weeks. He backed Truss. People are forgetting all this. So I think we're going to see all this happening within the Tory party while people are absolutely terrified about whether, how they're going to pay their bills or the mortgages. It's a terrible indictment of the party, actually.
Well, they no doubt would say mistakes were made. Liz Truss she resigned after just 6 weeks. So they're saying they're solving the problem. They now want to very quickly orchestrate a leadership race. They want to do that fairly, but they're trying to do it in the course of a week, and then they will address some of these issues.
But you can't bring back a man, Mr. Boris Johnson, who just weeks ago had to leave his job as Prime Minister because his own colleagues thought his position was unsustainable. So have we so short a sense of history? And, there's this awful entitlement in him that he can just fly back from the Caribbean and, he'll get his 100 supporters, and he probably will. And I know that there are people out there, because I've spoken to them, members who desperately want him back. They see him as one of them, God knows why, but also he's more entertaining. Certainly Truss didn't have the communication skills and the personality, perhaps, to be leader, and he has an overabundance of both. So I think the tribal wars in The Guardian is starting, and it is bound to carry on, which actually makes me extremely depressed.
Let's take a look, shall we?
Because of what I said earlier.
Yasmin, at the front of the Daily Telegraph. This interests me because the Daily Telegraph has been seen to be a bit of a Boris Johnson backer in the past. They employed him, didn't they? He wrote a column for the Daily Telegraph. And yet their front page really interests me. They've got a banner head saying, now is not the time for Boris. That's a Charles Moore article there, saying they talk about... He says in this headline, he's writing about why a comeback may be too soon. Their main headline there is about Rishi Sunak managing to get backing. And they also have an interview with Penny Mordaunt, which is the third story on their front page, talking about trying to recruit a cabinet of all the talents and pull the party together. So quite interesting how the Telegraph is pitching it.
Yes. And I do rate, out of all of them, I think Penny Mordaunt is a very interesting politician. Actually, I featured her in my book, Ladies Who Punch, because I find her background, she has a very interesting backstory, a very moving backstory, and she seems calm, and she's been calm even through the turmoil recently. And she could be the answer, because she hasn't been caught up in the most kind of extraordinary conflicts that we've had within the party for too long, really. So I think it's interesting that the Telegraph is sort of tacitly pushing her forward. I am surprised about Charles Moore. Charles Moore has been a fan of Boris's for a very long time.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to read the article. It's hard to tell exactly what he's saying just from a headline, isn't it? And let's move on, shall we, to get some more of the papers, and just to say apologies as well that Joanna Williams hasn't been able to join us so far. A few problems. I think we've got problems with the sound now, but we will try and catch up with her this hour, if not subsequent hours. But let's move on to the I, shall we, Yasmin? Britain's next PM, Sunak leads Johnson, is their headline. As I say, once again, nearly all the headlines concern the race. Some of the tabloids, I think The Sun, for example, has Boris Johnson on its front page saying, "I'm up for it," and there's a picture of him on his holiday at the moment. Do you think there's a sense that with lots of the papers focusing on the fact that Boris Johnson might be planning a comeback, he hasn't formally declared, of course, do you think that gives him a momentum that he might otherwise not have got? He becomes a focus of the conversation because it would be quite extraordinary if that were to happen.
Well, I mean, this is going to happen. He's got enough supporters who are pushing for him. It is going to happen. And I personally feel enraged, actually, that he is once again the focus of the story, when the story should be, you know, how the Kwarteng Truss alliance and what they tried to do, their experiment, their economic experiment.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We have got Joanna and we've got very little time left. I want to give her a little say. Joanna, welcome. I'm so sorry we've had such problems getting through to you. It's a lovely clear picture now we've got you. I'm just going to ask you to reflect on the morning's coverage of the leadership race. You can pick out whichever front page you want to, but what do you make of how the papers are covering it this morning?
Well, I think it's very interesting. I'm sure the country is very much split between people who are looking at Boris making a comeback with some excitement and probably far more of a population, let's be honest, who are looking on it with utter dread and cannot show whether this is a comedy or tragedy that we're really being confronted with. I think the fact is that Boris Johnson is the only person who can claim to have a democratic mandate. He did lead his party to a landslide victory just a couple of years ago, and it was under his prime ministership and a manifesto that he contributed towards writing that people voted for. So I think for me personally, the ultimate thing is that we do need to have a general election now.
Okay, and on that note, we will explore that a lot further in the next hour when I'm sure we'll have both of you, but lovely to see you both. It'll be return to normal service in an hour's time. Thanks very much indeed.